Hello my friends, and welcome back to some regular scheduled programming. My last video was a spur of the moment decision to film and share, and it's helping some people and making some more people frustrated. But I tried to do my best, and I am going to have some more caliber tutorials and information coming up. I think there was a lot of requests for a few different things, so I will have those coming up. But today, what I wanted to share is my stack of classic tomes. I'm using the word tome to mean a book over 500 pages that I'm just straight out avoiding. Also, my tripod seems very crooked. Let's see. I think that's a little better. So classic tomes. I just finished Nicholas Nickleby last week and was taking a tiny little break, but want to continue to read a classic, a very heavy classic, like literally heavy classic, because they do scare me, but I do have some different things in place to help myself slowly get through them, and it feels really good to check off a really thick book. And I personally enjoy reading most classics physically because I enjoy annotating them and writing my thoughts and opinions in the margins. So for the most part, if I can find it fairly cheap physically, that's what I prefer to do. Some of the more obscure classics I think I will read digitally, but I wanted to share my thick classic collection, let you know why I've been avoiding them. And then a week or so ago, week and a half ago, I put out a newsletter, my Substack newsletter, and I let you guys vote on which classic tome I should read next. I picked 4, give you guys 4 options, and you guys could vote. And as of right now, I have no idea which one won. I'm a little terrified, but we'll see together. So let's just start off. Why don't I start with the Dickens that I have here. I'm not sure if this is all of my Dickens or even really all of the classic tomes that I own, but these are the ones that I could find. It is interesting though, because it definitely depends on the edition of the book that you have. I have some classics that I think in different editions would be considered a tome over 500 pages, but in the edition that I have them in, they're like 480, whatever. I didn't include those, so we're just going 500 plus here, just going for the big ones. So I have actually 2 Dickens. I know this looks like 3, but I have 2 copies of the same one. And then the other Dickens that I have are actually under 500 pages, which is great. So next year in January and February, I will be reading The Old Curiosity Shop. This is my next Dickens book. I've said before, I'm going in publication order, skipping over Oliver Twist because I've read that one. But I've done The Pickwick Papers, Nicholas Nickleby. This one is for next year. So I did not give any of these Dickens books as options for my next read because he's just my January, February guy. He's who I hang out with for those 2 months. The next one I have here is David Copperfield. I have 2 different editions. This is the Arcturus edition. I have a lot of books in this edition and I like it because they kind of go together on the shelf, but it's not the greatest to read from. Oh, this one does have illustrations. I don't know if my other one does. So I just couldn't decide if I should keep this one or get rid of it. This edition I kind of love. It's very vintage. I got it for $1.50, I think. It lays much flatter. I think it'll be better to read. I do not know if it has illustrations though. It does not. That is a little sad. It's always nice when you're reading a Dickens and there's an illustration and that takes up 2 pages and then suddenly you're 2 pages farther along. So I'm not sure which edition I'm going to read this from, but he will be coming up eventually. Feeling them both. This one actually feels heavier in the hands. So the reason I am avoiding Dickens is I'm kind of not. I just have him on a calendar. I'm collecting his books as I go, but I have a plan for these books, not so much for the rest of the books. So some of these books I'm avoiding, well, all of them I'm avoiding because they're so big, and that's just intimidating. Some of these I'm avoiding because they are translated works, and I feel like I want to get better with my classics reading of books that were originally written in the English language before I try to stretch myself even farther. But let's start with a translated work. I have Don Quixote in this Macmillan Collector's Edition, I think is what this is called. It is huge. I really wanted to read this book because I watched a high school play, it's almost 2 years ago. And like, you know, when you see something played out, you kind of want to read the book. But the reason I'm really avoiding this one is because it's a terrible edition for such a huge book. I've read other classics in this edition like Agnes Grey, but they're much smaller. This has teeny tiny font and like, can I even open it to the halfway mark? Like, it barely opens. I know as I read the other pages it will open a little better, but I'm keeping my eye out for another edition of this. But until then, I'm keeping this one. So I do want to read it at some point. Okay, we've got Les Mis. This is another one that I'm keeping my eye out for another edition of because these are translated. I have written down the translator that I've heard recommended. I think her name is Christine something. I'll put her name up. I don't remember offhand. But I found this in a little free library, so I thought I would grab it. If I am like ready to read it, I'll read it from this edition if I have not found a different one. But yeah, it's daunting, that's for sure. So we'll see if I end up reading it from this edition or the one I'm waiting to find. This one actually looks like it's, is it 500 pages? It is 500, over 500. So we've got The Mill on the Floss by George Eliot. I have only read Middlemarch, I think, by her. Have I read anything else? I think Middlemarch is the only one I've read. I own some of her other books. And Middlemarch, I know Shatona has mentioned before. I think it was in a book that she wrote. There was a character that said it's called Middlemarch because by the middle you want to march away. I found that book dreadfully boring. And so I'm intimidated to try another one of hers that's massive and maybe boring. I don't know. But I also at the same time do want to read it. So there's that. Okay, let's do some more translated stuff. I've got Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. This is one of the ones I remember I put down as an option. This is deceiving because if you look at some other books, let's see here, like this David Copperfield has just over 750 pages. Anna Karenina looks shorter, like significantly shorter, but the paper is so thin. This is actually over 900 pages. So it's deceiving. There is a bookmark in here. I do not think that is from me, although I did start reading Anna Karenina a couple years ago when I was using the Serial Reader app. I mentioned this in my video on like tips for reading classics. I started using that app, but was mostly reading classics in the middle of the night when I was up with a baby. And so a lot of the stuff I didn't retain. Definitely need to start over. Pretty sure I need a character list for this one. So I do remember this being an option. I do not remember what else I put down as options. I remember two? I remember two others. Huh. Well, we're gonna find out together yet. Then I have Vanity Fair by William Thackeray. Honestly, this is something like a book that I know nothing about. And it is only just over 700 pages as well. See, like way less pages in here than in here, but this looks thinner. I don't know anything about the story. It's just one that I've heard referenced, and so therefore I want to read it. But because I don't hear people talking about it, it's pretty low on my list right now. I've got a Joseph Heller. We've got Catch-22. This is a pretty cool edition of, it's in Everyman's Library, that's why. I feel like theirs are always really good. And then that would look really good on the shelf too, just like that. I don't know anything about Catch-22, but apparently it's one of the funniest books ever written. So it is one that I would like to read at some point. But like a lot of these, it's just the more I hear people talking about them and generally saying positive things, the more interested I am in reading them. So this isn't super high on my list because I haven't heard it talked about a ton. One that I have heard people talk about is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. But at the same time, I don't actually know much. First published in 1952, so technically not a classic if a person goes with the 100 years published kind of thing. So we'll see. I think this is one I put down as an option. So I know Anna Karenina, East of Eden, and then this one Gone with the Wind. I know those were 3 of my options. I do not remember what my 4th one was. Yeah, no idea. So Gone with the Wind, I've never watched the movie. This one is just like 700 and some pages as well. But I have memories of like way back when I was a kid wanting to watch something on TV, and the Gone with the Wind movie was just finishing. So I know like snippets of it, but really don't know the story. Like it's very discombobulated. It's one I kind of hope gets picked because I know so little but just enough to be confused. And another Victor Hugo is The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Yeah, this is one that I also don't hear people really talk about, but I feel like I heard talked about more when I was a kid because of the movie, maybe? I don't know. Was the movie just this title or was it a different title? I don't remember. But the more I know about it, the more I want to read it, so I'm like more interested to read this than some. And my last one that I have is The Three Musketeers by Andre Dumas. This one I know Jared has read and he didn't love it, and therefore it made me not as interested in reading it as happens, but I do want to read it eventually because it's a book that I know like the general plot line to, but not how it all happens kind of thing. So those are my classics. I need to run down and grab my computer because I left it downstairs, and we will find out together which book I'm going to be reading next. Okay, computer acquired. So I have Gone with the Wind, East of Eden. Oh, The Mill on the Floss is the other option. I totally didn't remember that. Okay, The Mill on the Floss, and then Anna Karenina. Those are the options. That's a big stack of books. I'm going to flip over to the responses and see the pie chart and see who wins. Let's see. Ooh. Oh, it was really close. Okay, at 35.9% of the votes, I will be reading Anna Karenina. So at 32% was Gone with the Wind. Those were really close. The Mill on the Floss only had 9.4, and East of Eden had 22.7. So of course, this is probably the most pages out of all the classics. How long was Les Mis? Although this is kind of, yeah, this one's over 1,000, but it's also a little bit more mass market sized. Okay, well, Anna Karenina. I've already decided I'm waiting till March to start it, just to give myself a little bit of a break after the Pickwick Papers. Yeah, okay. I do not know much, but I have started it, like I said. I think I'm going to keep a character list because I do remember, I feel like it was this book, and I think it's a Russian classic thing where characters often go by multiple names. They'll go by like their first name and then their last name, and then they'll have like a nickname or something. And so I think a character list will help me. Yeah, I know I'm not a huge fan of the like storyline in general. I know it has to do with love and adultery, so not really cool with that, but I do want to read it. Matthew Arnold, who I kind of know him as, if this is the same Matthew Arnold, a poet, like a silly poet writing silly poems. He apparently had an essay on Tolstoy that says, "We are not to take Anna Karenina as a work of art. We are to take it as a piece of life." I will have to think on what that actually means in relation to this. So I will be reading Anna Karenina starting in March. Ideally, I would like these classics to take me no longer than 2 months each, but if it's really big, maybe I will allow more grace and allow myself to go a little longer. We'll see. With Dickens, I was reading about 10 to 15 pages a day. At that rate, it would take me about 3 months to get through this, but we'll see. If you guys want to join me by reading this, you are more than welcome to. I keep considering starting some kind of like a chat for the classics that I'm reading. I'm just worried that once I start that, I'm not gonna want to keep it up. And I feel like as someone that maybe starts it, I should definitely be there in the chat. So I'm considering it. If you would be interested in joining in and having some kind of chat, like chapter by chapter type thing, let me know in the comments and we'll see what ends up happening. Wish me luck.